The lights blaze hot on the debate stage, cameras fixed, every lens hungry for the moment. And there he is, Donald Trump, red-faced, his words no longer measured but spiraling. His voice booms, sharper, louder, as his fist slams against the podium. The crowd reacts in waves. Some cheer, some jeer, but most hold their breath as the air thickens with tension. His anger, once a performance, now feels raw, uncontained, almost desperate. And then, in the middle of that storm, comes silence. The room stills. All eyes shift as Representative Jasmine Crockett leans forward, her expression unshaken, her tone calm but cutting. With a single sentence, delivered like the strike of a blade, she interrupts the roar. The words are brief, sharp, impossible to ignore. For a split second, the audience doesn't move. Then comes the gasp, an audible shock sweeping across the hall, echoed instantly online as millions witness it in real time. The mighty outburst falters. Trump blinks, caught off guard, his tongue caught mid-motion. The man who built his persona on dominance suddenly looks rattled, unsure of his footing. The cameras linger on his face, searching for a comeback that doesn't arrive. Instead, the silence stretches, weighted and electric, as Crockett's one-liner lingers in the air like an undeniable truth. In that instant, the stage is no longer his. The power has shifted. Not through shouting, not through spectacle, but through the precision of one voice that refused to be drowned out. It was the kind of moment that lives far beyond the stage, a clip destined to ricochet across news cycles, timelines, and living rooms, igniting debates and lighting a fire in those who saw themselves in her defiance. That one sentence didn't just shut him down, it sent shockwaves across America. For progressives, it felt like vindication. For his critics, that it was proof of a fracture in the armor. And for Trump himself, it was the rare taste of silence, forced not by applause but by confrontation he could not overpower. But this was only the beginning. This wasn't just a debate. It was a battle for America's soul. On that stage, under the relentless lights, the confrontation became something far greater than two people trading words. It was America itself, fractured, bruised, and searching, projected in real time. Every phrase, every pause, every glare wasn't confined to the room. It was beamed into living rooms, streamed onto phones, dissected by pundits, memed by strangers. Millions watched, millions judged, and millions felt the weight of what unfolded. Donald Trump, once the unshakable force of chaos, had embodied a vision of America built on division, fear, and noise. He didn't need facts, didn't need restraint. His power was spectacle, his strength the disruption. For years, that style worked. His outbursts weren't accidents, they were weapons, bludgeoning opponents into silence. He had thrived in arenas where volume equaled victory. But across from him stood Jasmine Crockett, a rising voice, grounded not in rage but in clarity. She wasn't there to match his chaos with chaos. She was there to prove that truth, delivered with precision, could pierce through the fog. In a country where so many felt drowned out, Crockett represented something rare. Calm courage in the face of intimidation. She spoke not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been shouted over, dismissed, or told their voice didn't matter. The stakes could not have been higher. America in this moment was a nation stretched thin, red against blue, truth against denial, justice against corruption. The pandemic scars still fresh, the wounds of racial injustice still bleeding. The cost of division evident in every headline, and here on one stage, all of it collided. Crockett's one-liner wasn't just a retort, it was a spark that reminded millions that even in the face of bluster and bullying, dignity could still stand tall. Social media lit up, hashtags trended, clips replayed. Young voters saw her and thought, that could be me. Immigrants heard her and felt, finally, someone is speaking with us, not at us. Progressives rallied, finding in her a symbol of what resistance could look like when sharpened by conviction. Trump supporters called it unfair, called it disrespectful, but even in their outrage was proof the moment mattered. For the first time in years, the debate stage no longer bent to him. And that terrified his movement as much as it energized hers, because this wasn't just an exchange. It was a fracture line in history, a sign that America's political future would not be written solely by the loudest voice in the room, but by those brave enough to challenge it. And just when the nation thought it had seen it all, for years Donald Trump built his political power not through compromise or vision, but through sheer dominance of the spotlight. He was a master manipulator of outrage, turning every scandal, every insult, every shocking headline into fuel. What would bury another politician only seemed to make him stronger. Trump thrived on chaos. He didn't care if people loved him or hated him, so long as they were talking about him. From the moment he descended that golden escalator in 2015, the rules bent in his favor. Outrage became his brand. Insults became his strategy. His rallies echoed with chants that blurred entertainment with governance, leaving his opponents scrambling to match his theater. His arrogance was not hidden, it was celebrated. Trump believed he was untouchable. Each scandal, whether financial controversies, allegations of corruption, or his brutal attacks on opponents, was brushed aside with a smirk and a wave. The more critics piled on, the more his supporters rallied. He weaponized victimhood, spinning every accusation as proof that the system was out to get him. And it worked. The media, unable to look away, amplified his every move. Networks replayed his insults. Headlines carried his wildest claims. Even those who despised him fed into his power by keeping his name on their lips. Trump understood the modern age. Attention was currency, and he was a billionaire in it. This arrogance became his armor. He spoke with unchecked confidence, dismissing experts, belittling opponents, even rewriting history with the sheer force of his certainty. To him, humility was weakness. Apologies were traps. The only way forward was louder, harsher, bigger. And with each victory, whether at the polls, in the courts of public opinion, or simply in dominating the news cycle, his belief grew. No one could stop him. But beneath the surface, contradictions festered. He claimed to speak for the working class, yet lived in gold-plated towers. He railed against corruption, yet scandals trailed him at every step. He demanded loyalty, yet turned on allies the moment they no longer served him. He called himself a truth-teller, yet twisted reality into whatever narrative suited him best. Trump's story was not one of resilience, but of defiance, an endless belief that rules didn't apply to him. Every past insult, every crude nickname for an opponent, every mocking jab at women, immigrants, or even veterans, it all formed a portrait of a man who thought cruelty was strength. And millions followed, mistaking arrogance for leadership. But arrogance has a flaw. It blinds. It convinces the powerful that their reign is permanent, that their opponents are too weak, too divided, too timid to ever strike back. And that night on the debate stage, Donald Trump stood tall, confident as ever, convinced no one could deliver a blow that mattered. But his opponent had a story he never expected. Before the lights of the debate stage, before the cameras locked on her face, Jasmine Crockett was no stranger to pressure. Her journey had been built on resilience, the kind forged not in comfort, but in fire. Where Trump's empire rose from gold-plated privilege, Crockett's rise was cut from the grit of public service, hard work, and a relentless fight for those who had no voice. She didn't come from power. She built her way into it. Raised in a world where the odds weren't designed in her favor, Crockett learned early that dignity wasn't something handed to you. It was something you carried, even when the world tried to strip it away. She carried the weight of those who had been silenced, the working mothers with no health care, the communities left behind, the people who felt democracy was a game rigged against them. Her path was not smooth. Law school was a battlefield of its own, where she had to prove she belonged in rooms not designed for her presence. As a public defender, she saw the raw, unfiltered face of America's inequalities. Young men shackled before they had a chance. Families broken by a system more interested in punishment than justice. These weren't just stories in the news. These were the people she stood beside, fought for, and sometimes cried with when the system swallowed them whole. It shaped her. Each case, each late night, each battle against impossible odds sharpened her intelligence and deepened her empathy. Unlike Trump, who saw people as pawns, Crockett saw people as her purpose. She knew what it meant to sit across from someone who had lost everything and still look them in the eye with dignity. That kind of weight changes a person. It gives them a strength no insult can crack, no scandal can erase. When she entered politics, she carried that same fire. She wasn't interested in grandstanding or theatrics. Her voice was steady, her questions sharp, her resolve unshaken. Colleagues and critics alike learned quickly. She did not back down. Yet what made her dangerous wasn't volume or rage, it was her calm. While others stormed, she listened. While others shouted, she calculated. Trump thrived on chaos. Crockett thrived on composure. She represented something he could not understand: quiet, unshakable power. A power built on lived struggle, not staged outrage. A power that came not from dominating a room, but from owning her truth inside it. And the people noticed. Young women saw in her a reflection of possibility. Communities long ignored saw in her a voice that refused to waver. She didn't need to tell them she understood. They could feel it in the way she carried herself. Every word was measured, every stance grounded. Where Trump's empire was showmanship, Crockett's was substance. Still, she was underestimated. Pundits wrote her off as too new, too young, or too untested to stand on a stage with a figure as bombastic as Donald Trump. But Crockett knew the power of being the underdog. She knew that when people don't see you coming, your strike lands even harder. Her resilience was her armor, but her humanity was her weapon. Trump could mock, insult, and roar. But Crockett's calm would slice deeper than his loudest attack. Her intelligence was not only fierce but dangerous to a man who thrived on bluster. She didn't need to match his rage. She only needed to stand steady while he unraveled. And as the debate approached, she carried with her not just her story, but the stories of those who had been ignored, mocked, or silenced. She knew this wasn't just another political clash. It was a moment of reckoning. Because where Trump had built his empire on arrogance, Crockett had built hers on endurance. Where he turned weakness into spectacle, she turned it into fuel. And while he sought to divide, she embodied the quiet dignity of those who had spent a lifetime yearning for someone to fight back. The lights of the stage were unforgiving, but Crockett was ready. She had carried heavier burdens, faced harsher trials, stood taller against stronger storms. And when the cameras rolled, she was ready. The debate floor had turned into a spectacle. Under the glaring stage lights, Trump leaned forward, his voice booming with the force of a man used to drowning out opposition. Every sentence came with a sneer, every gesture exaggerated, hands slicing through the air, finger jabbing toward the moderator, the audience, and, most often, straight at Jasmine Crockett. He interrupted her at every turn, cutting across her words before they could breathe, his tone dripping with disdain. To his supporters, it was the familiar performance, dominance through noise. To millions of others, it was chaos masquerading as strength. But Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice to match his. Instead, she allowed his interruptions to hang heavy in the room, let his words echo long enough for their hollowness to reveal itself. Every insult hurled toward her seemed to wash over her like rain sliding off steel. Where he was fire, erratic, uncontrollable, consuming. She was water, steady and unyielding, shaping the moment without ever losing form. The audience began to feel the shift. At first, there was laughter at Trump's theatrical insults, the kind of laughter he'd fed on for years. But laughter turned uneasy when he kept going. When his tirades began to sound less commanding and more desperate, Crockett's silence became louder than his shouting. Her calm presence painted him not as the alpha he imagined, but as a man unraveling in front of the nation. The tension between them grew like a boxing match in slow motion. Every interruption was a jab, every insult a hook thrown wildly. And every time, Crockett countered with restraint, the kind of patience that frustrates aggressors more than any insult could. She didn't swing recklessly. She waited, measured, letting him burn his energy, letting him expose his weakness. Commentators would later describe it as a duel of power and poise, a clash that revealed the sharpest contrast in American politics. One man who mistook volume for authority, and one woman who understood that true strength is never loud. And as the debate rolled on, the stakes rose higher. Trump, red-faced and restless, leaned on old habits, exaggerations, name-calling, mocking tones. Crockett, unbothered, waited for her moment. The crowd leaned in. Millions at home held their breath. This wasn't just a battle of words anymore. It was the unraveling of a performance America had seen too many times before. But the knockout blow hadn't even landed yet. The storm had been raging for nearly an hour. Trump's interruptions, his mocking laughs, his impatient arm waving, all of it had been building like rolling thunder, drowning the air with noise. Crockett, calm but unyielding, had endured it with the quiet intensity of someone who knew her moment would come. And then it did. It happened in an instant, the kind of moment that crystallizes into history before the words have even finished leaving the speaker's lips. Trump had just launched into another tirade, his voice pitching upward, hands flailing. "You're weak, Jasmine. You're a nothing. People don't even know who you are. I made America great. And you've done nothing. You've been nothing, and you'll always be nothing." The insult lingered in the air, heavier than the others. It wasn't just noise, hell, it was an attempt to erase her existence in front of the nation. The audience murmured. Some gasped. Others chuckled nervously, waiting for Crockett to respond. She didn't rush. She didn't flinch. She straightened her posture, tilted her head slightly, and fixed her gaze on Trump, steady, piercing, unblinking. Then, in a calm, measured voice that sliced through the noise like a blade, she said, "Mr. Trump, I would rather be nothing than be everything America is tired of." Silence. Pure silence. The words landed with the weight of a gavel. The debate stage froze. For the first time all night, Trump didn't have a comeback ready on his lips. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His eyes darted toward the audience, searching for the laughter, the applause, the validation he was used to, but none came. The crowd had shifted. On the split screen, you could see it. Some audience members gasped audibly, hands flying to their mouths. Others leaned forward, whispering as though they had just witnessed a historic strike. Social media would later loop the exact frame. Crockett's calm delivery, Trump's frozen expression, the audience caught mid-gasp. It was the picture of a giant stumbling. And Crockett wasn't done. Her voice stayed calm, steady, almost surgical. "You shout because you fear silence. You insult because you fear truth. And you attack me because you cannot control me. America has heard you for years. Tonight, they will hear me." Another shockwave rippled through the hall. Phones lit up, the fingers tapping furiously as clips were uploaded in real time. Hashtags began trending before the debate had even ended. #Crockett clapback, #truth over chaos, #nothing but power. Trump, visibly rattled, tried to strike back. "Oh, give me a break. This woman is a fraud. She's reading off a script. She doesn't even believe what she's saying." His words stumbled out, less like weapons and more like flailing arms after being knocked down. But it was too late. Every counterattack fell flat, every attempt to regain control drowned beneath the echo of Crockett's one-liner. The camera caught the contrast perfectly. Trump red-faced, jabbing the air, and Crockett composed, shoulders square, hands steady on the podium. A small but undeniable glint of confidence in her eyes. Commentators would later describe it as the cinematic climax of the debate. The moment when the underdog not only stood her ground but seized the stage with a single blow. It wasn't the loudest line of the night, but it was the sharpest, the one that cut deepest because it was delivered without anger, without noise, without desperation. Just calm precision. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half buzzing with disbelief. Even those who had come expecting a spectacle got something different, a moment of clarity, a reminder that debates were not just performances but battles of character. And Crockett had revealed Trump's weakness not with fury, but with restraint. The replay would loop endlessly across every platform. TikToks with captions like, "This is how you end a bully." Instagram reels slowing the footage to highlight Trump's stunned face. Twitter threads calling it the line that defined the debate. Other quotables began to spread too. "You shout because you fear silence. You attack me because you cannot control me. America has heard you for years. Tonight, they will hear me." Each line carried its own electricity, but it was the first mic drop that became legend. Trump, refusing to admit defeat, tried to claw back the narrative. "Look, folks, she's just another puppet of the radical left. She's nothing new." But each sentence rang weaker, each insult more hollow. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They were listening, and they were listening to her. Crockett didn't need to gloat. She didn't need to hammer the victory. Her power was in the restraint, in letting the silence do the work. Because silence, in that moment, was louder than anything Trump could shout. Narrators would later compare it to a cinematic duel. Not fists, not weapons, but words wielded like blades. One man swinging wildly, trying to intimidate, and one woman waiting patiently, then striking with precision. It was the moment she took command of the stage. Not as a guest, not as an underdog, but as a leader. And as the cameras rolled, as the audience murmured, as the nation tweeted and texted and replayed the clip, one truth became undeniable. The balance of power had shifted. She had landed the blow he never saw coming. And the ripple effect spread faster than anyone imagined. The moment the words left Jasmine Crockett's lips, they didn't just linger in the air of the debate hall. They detonated. For a split second, silence clung to the stage like smoke after an explosion. Then came the gasps, the murmurs, the ripple of disbelief sweeping through the crowd. But outside those walls, in the digital veins of America, the moment was already alive, surging at light speed. Within minutes, hashtags erupted across every platform. #Crockett clapback, #truth over Trump, #mic drop moment. Twitter feeds flooded with clips, looping endlessly as users typed in all caps. She just ended him on live TV. The algorithm couldn't keep up. Engagement numbers broke records as millions clicked, shared, and commented. On TikTok, teens remixed the moment into sound bites layered with booming bass drops, while Instagram turned Crockett's poised expression into the meme of the night. Newsrooms scrambled. Editors barked orders, producers cut together highlight reels, and headlines lit up across the country like a synchronized fireworks show. Crockett silences Trump. The one-liner heard across America. Debate shocker redefines 2025 race. Journalists leaned on words like stunning, jaw-dropping, historic. Anchors replayed the clip with slow-motion emphasis, pointing out the microsecond where Trump's expression faltered, the crack in the armor. Late-night comedians sharpened their monologues before the ink on the transcripts was dry, declaring, "We may have just witnessed the roast of the decade, but it wasn't just the media elite. In living rooms and kitchens, in dorms and diners, everyday Americans were transfixed." Parents nudged their kids. "Watch this. This is how you stand your ground." Immigrants, often told to stay silent, saw themselves in Crockett's calm defiance. Workers on the night shift shared the clip in group chats, typing. Finally, someone said what we've all been thinking. For many, it wasn't just entertainment. It was vindication. Inside the Capitol, lawmakers whispered in corridors. Allies of Trump wore forced smiles while their aides checked trending feeds with growing unease. Political strategists, Democrat and Republican alike, rewound the footage again and again, dissecting every pause, every syllable, every tremor in the room. They knew this wasn't just another debate moment. This was a rupture. Because what Crockett delivered wasn't only a one-liner. It was a mirror, reflecting years of pent-up frustration, exposing the emptiness of bluster against the power of precision. And when the reflection went viral, America couldn't look away. But beyond the hashtags, beyond the memes and headlines, a deeper current flowed beneath the noise. A question hummed in the background of every conversation, every clip replay, every think piece draft. Why did this moment matter so much? And that question set the stage for what came next, because the clash wasn't just about two people under bright lights. It was about the soul of a nation. But beyond the noise, a deeper lesson emerged. When the lights dimmed and the debate wrapped, the moment lingered like a melody that refuses to fade. What Jasmine Crockett had delivered wasn't just a retort, it was a revelation. The clash, stripped of theatrics and noise, revealed a timeless truth. Dignity will always outlast hate, and truth will always pierce through arrogance. Trump had relied on volume, the force of intimidation, the swagger of spectacle. For years, that had been enough to bend rooms and silence challengers. But in that instant, Crockett rewrote the script. She didn't rise to his rage. She didn't meet venom with venom. Instead, she wielded restraint like a blade, calm, deliberate, devastating. The moral was clear, not just for politics but for life itself. Strength is not measured by how loud you shout, but by how firmly you stand. In Crockett's silence after the line, in her steady gaze, there was a lesson in resilience that transcended the stage. She became a symbol, not of partisan victory, but of what it means to confront power without losing yourself. The narrator's voice crystallizes the lesson. In the end, it wasn't volume that won the night. It was clarity. That line echoed through the broadcast like scripture. Parents repeated it to their children. Teachers wove it into classroom discussions. Pastors cited it in Sunday sermons. Crockett's words transformed into more than a political jab. They became a cultural marker, a shorthand for the triumph of dignity over chaos. And therein lies the emotional crescendo. Her one-liner no longer belonged solely to that stage, that night, or even to her. It entered the bloodstream of history, much like Kennedy's "Ask Not" or Obama's "Yes, we can." Crockett's moment etched itself into the national memory, not as partisan theater, but as proof that truth, when spoken plainly and without fear, has a force no insult can match. Her line, replayed millions of times, was more than political theater. It was a lifeline for those who had grown tired of shouting matches and endless spin. It told them that clarity still matters, that poise can defeat noise, that one voice, when steady and resolute, can ripple outward and shift the current of an entire nation. And so, as the cameras powered down, the deeper meaning remained. This wasn't about one candidate's win or another's loss. It was about what America saw in itself that night, the possibility of courage without cruelty, of resilience without rage. Crockett didn't just claim the moment. She embodied a universal truth, one that will outlast the news cycle and echo far beyond the election. And that's why this moment will be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Trump may have snapped first, but it was Jasmine Crockett who snapped America awake. What began as another chaotic debate transformed into a cultural turning point, reminding us that arrogance and insults eventually collapse under the weight of dignity and truth. In that moment, Crockett proved something bigger than politics. Resilience doesn't just survive the storm, it redefines it. Her calm precision showed that when faced with fury, composure is the sharpest weapon. And in doing so, she didn't just win an exchange, she ignited a movement. That's why her words still echo now, long after the stage lights dimmed. Because every replay, every meme, every headline isn't just about what was said, it's about what it meant, that dignity can still triumph, that truth can still cut through the noise, and that one voice, unshaken, can inspire millions. If you felt that spark, if you believe moments like this matter, then let's keep the ripple alive. Like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it so others can see why this debate will be remembered. And if you want more deep dives into the moments shaping history, don't forget to subscribe. Because this story isn't over. It's only the beginning of how dignity reclaims its place in public life. And so we close where it all began, with the line that stopped Trump cold and started something bigger than the debate itself. In the end, it wasn't volume that won the night. It was clarity.